India has some of the highest number of student suicides in the world. There is a gap definitely between the degrees we hold and the skills that we actually possess.
People, especially in India, I feel they have technical knowledge, but what they lack is in communication skills and communicating those skills, the technical knowledge that they have.
So we have 5 degrees, but if you can't communicate your caliber and your your achievements in an interview, then people are not going to hire you.
Don't be afraid that what other people will say.
Very, very true. Wow. Figure out what are your 1 or 2 strengths and focus on becoming a specialist in those 1 or 2 things rather than, becoming a generalist for 50 things. Public speaking is nothing but speaking to like a large audience.
Be okay if someone disagrees with you.
In a large corporation, you're a small part of a big company. Right. Whereas in a startup, you're a big part in a small company.
Hi everyone, this is Shagun Agarwal and welcome to another in-depth episode covering career growth, personal development and professional success. In this episode, you will gain valuable insights on navigating career transitions, mastering job search strategies and creating a strong personal brand for yourself. Today, I'm delighted to announce our very special guest, Mehar Batra. Mehar is a chartered accountant turned content creator, entrepreneur and career strategist. She's the founder of MSB Vision, which has over 6 lakh followers across all social media platforms. With a decade of experience working with different companies in India and the UK, and with years of experience in career development, Mehar is sure to promise a wealth of knowledge and inspiration to you all today. Let's dive into this enlightening session with Mehar Batra. Hi Mehar, welcome to today's show and I'm so grateful for your time and energy today.
Thanks for having me, Shagun. It's an honor to be talking to you today.
Mehar, could you share a little bit about your background and what made you transition from a chartered accountancy career to becoming a career coach?
Sure. So I am originally from New Delhi, India. I am a chartered accountant and I worked at some of the big companies for about 6 years in India. And then I decided to do my MBA from Imperial College in London. So I moved to London in 2016 to pursue my MBA. And while I was making that career move, I did not have many mentors to look up to, especially at that time. There were not many CAs doing MBAs and moving abroad, especially. So once I did make that career move, I also moved from the field of finance to strategy because I joined a strategy consulting firm at that time. So Shagun, I started getting a lot of messages on LinkedIn from, students who were 5-6 years behind me on the same career path, asking me questions which were very similar and repetitive. So they started asking me, why did you do CA? Why did you do MBA after CA? And why did you move to London, for example? So I just thought that I'm getting all these questions and messages and I feel like I wanted to share my successes and my failures with my community. So it was just a random idea that I came up with one fine day and I made one YouTube video. And from there, it just, the positive comments and messages that I got just kept me going. And now I'm a career coach a few years later.
I mean, it takes sometimes it just takes a click to find out where your calling is. And then you realize that you start enjoying that career much more than what you were previously doing.
Yes, definitely. That's exactly what happened with me.
I'm sure. So, Mehar, what if someone realizes that they are not in the correct career? And what should they stay and remain unhappy, or should they take the bold step of moving into the career path that they are meant to do, that they're interested in doing, that their real talents apply?
Wow. I have myself been in that position. I started working at one of the big corporates as an accountant, and my job was like an auditor accountant. And for the first 1.5 years, I was very excited because I was a part of this big multinational, wearing suit boot every day, meeting clients, international clients and representing the firm. But after 1.5 years, my energy started changing. Like I didn't feel as motivated as I did, for example, at the first day of my job. And I think that was just an inner sign from within me that was telling me that, I'm meant to do something else. And I feel all of us have those signs. Like if you're on the right path, you're not going to have feelings like that. If you're on the wrong path, then something within you will eat you that, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. So whether it could be, maybe the work is very monotonous for you. Maybe you're a creative person trapped in an analytical job, or vice versa. So I feel that you have to pay attention to those thoughts and your gut feeling that they say. And Shagun, to be honest, like everybody's circumstances are different. So I can't say that, yes, go ahead and quit your job. Maybe you have financial responsibilities. Maybe, you have certain other expectations people have from you. So dependent upon your personal journey, I would say really make a list of the pros and cons. What are the pros of you sticking to this job where you're not feeling fulfilled, and what are the cons of sticking and not quitting? So make a list. If your pros outweigh the cons, then stick to the job. If your cons are more than the pros, like your mental health is deteriorating, you're not fulfilled, you're not happy, then maybe you need to take that risk and take a bet on yourself and find something where you feel excited to go to work on a Monday morning.
Correct. Because I personally, since I've been in this career, that I've met so many people, especially students, who come and tell me that they're not happy in their jobs and they're just completely, every day they keep waiting for Friday evenings. I believe that work should be something where you're enjoying your weekdays as much as your weekend. And if that is something you're able to get, then really you realize your purpose and you find what you love doing. And the best thing about when you work in something that you love doing, work doesn't feel like, work. Work feels like play. And you start really enjoying that field.
Yes. Reminds me of the Steve Jobs quote where he says, work is going to fill a large part of your life, right? So you have to find something that really makes you happy.
Absolutely. I myself, I did my MBA in finance. But even then also, I knew that I'm good at marketing. So when I was working as a finance professional, also as an investment banker, also I started transitioning into strategy. I kept telling my boss, please put me into marketing, put me into research, put me into strategy. But the transition happened very slow, because it's not possible to just quit your job one fine day and go into a world where you have to start from the scratch, where there are a lot of risk involved. You don't know if you'll succeed or not. So you have to make the transition very slowly. And even I did that transition. You did the transition. We meet so many people who did the transition. And they have been happy at the end of the day.
Yes. Agreed. Definitely. I think career change always takes a little bit of courage. And I always say that it's long-term gain versus short-term pain. Right? So when I switched my field, and maybe you can echo this, because I was switching from finance to strategy, and I was really pushing of finding a strategy-specific job, but my background was all in finance. So I had to compromise on the designation that I joined in the organization. So they said that, you don't have experience of working in London in the strategy field. So instead of a senior consultant, you need to come in as a consultant, prove your worth, and then you'll get promoted. So I think you may have to make that short-term sacrifice if you're switching your field. So for example, if I want to become a photographer tomorrow, I'm not going to get the best clients, right? I'll have to build my portfolio from scratch and then go and get those high-ticket clients. So same in any field.
Correct. Sometimes it's worth it, and sometimes we have to analyze if it is worth it or not.
Of course, yes.
Mihir, statistics say that unemployment is on the rise. There are a lot of young people who are still unemployed, looking for jobs. But on the flip side, I as an entrepreneur, and I have fellow entrepreneurs also around me, who keep telling that they don't get good candidates, that they're struggling for months interviewing hundreds of people and still not finding good people around them who could be working in those specific jobs. So I couldn't understand if there's real unemployment or just unemployment on the pages. And if there are people who are looking for jobs, then why aren't they filling these positions that different entrepreneurs are looking for? Is upskilling the solution? Are people not skilled enough to be filling those positions? What do you feel as a issue? I'm at a loss to understand now.
I think there could be two things, Shagun. A lot of these, I don't know if you read the news, but there was an article which said that 8,000 of people who are graduating from IITs have not got placed. So I think it depends on what kind of roles they're looking for. So if you say, I only want to work at the big corporates, maybe the kind of, because I've read like all these big corporates such as Infosys and Wipro are not hiring as many freshers, for example, as they used to. So what is happening is, of course, because of AI and automation, some of those very menial jobs are getting replaced by tech. But having said that, I feel, to answer your question, yes, there is still a huge demand for people who have the right skills. Now, those skills could be, more than just your qualifications on paper. Like you may have 5 degrees, but if you can't communicate your caliber and your achievements in an interview, then people are not going to hire you. So I think there is a gap definitely between the degrees we hold and the skills that we actually possess. So theoretical knowledge versus practical implications.
Practical knowledge.
Exactly. And that's why I keep telling my community to, go get internships, do even the smallest project that you can during the summer, so that you expose yourself to real life work scenarios and also expose yourself to these networks of entrepreneurs who may be hiring and you don't know about. So I feel there is definitely unemployment, but there's also hidden opportunities that you need to find yourself, maybe by sending a message to a founder on LinkedIn. So I feel that Don't wait for the opportunity to come to you. Like, go and create that opportunity.
And also, I believe communication skill is one area where most people need to improve upon themselves. Because people, especially in India, I feel they have technical knowledge, but what they lack is in communication skills and communicating those skills, the technical knowledge that they have. So that becomes a huge barrier, is personally what I have seen.
Yes, definitely. I also agree with you. And I feel a lot of young professionals are now realizing this, and they are practicing and, following pages like mine and your podcast to understand that there are problems in their way of delivery and communicating their skills. So I feel like if you feel that communication is your drawback, you need to expose yourself to conversing with people on a regular basis, listening to podcasts like these where you understand how other people communicate, and practice. Like, it just takes practice to get better.
Yeah. And especially after the internet, there's a huge field of information out there. If you want to learn anything and everything, it's right there on YouTube, on podcast, on Instagram. There's so many other different pages that we can follow and listen to different podcasts, listen to different things. That there are ways to improve so many of your skills using the internet. At free, of course, there's no cost attached to it. So there is big opportunity for young people to be using internet to learn as much as they can and to upskill themselves.
Definitely, yes.
Megha, it is said that as soon as you open your mouth, your capability as a leader is judged. And when I say open your mouth, I mean public speaking skills, communication skills also, but public speaking skills also. So what is the importance you feel for anyone who is wanting to climb up the ladder in the corporate world to imbibe public speaking skills?
To be very honest with you, Shagun, I was really bad at even participating in team meetings because of, self-doubt and imposter syndrome. So I never pushed myself to even speak up in a team meeting. And I feel like it's a muscle that you have to develop, right? Like we were talking earlier, we are very fearful of what people think of us. And that's what keeps us in our shell and keeps us from speaking up. I feel like really challenge yourself to start speaking up maybe in smaller settings. Now, that could be maybe you're chilling with friends and family and you just say, okay, I want to give a speech today. That's how I started. I started giving toasts at family functions. So I think when you start becoming comfortable in smaller, more comfortable settings, then only you will increase and develop that muscle. And then once you started to do it more frequently, again, your communication skills will develop slowly and steadily. So I used to set a challenge for myself that in the next 10 team meetings, I'm going to say at least one thing. So, when I put that kind of goal and deadline on myself, I started participating more, and slowly and steadily that I was getting more and more comfortable sharing my opinion, sharing my knowledge, and being okay with people disagreeing with me. So I feel like a lot of us just stay in the cocoon and fear what people will think. And I think public speaking is nothing but speaking to like a large audience. And if you can do it in smaller settings, slowly and steadily, you will be able to give that presentation to 50 clients sitting in front of you. So I feel like stop feeling like everybody's judging you. Everybody's there to listen to you. You were hired in that organization for a reason. You are part of that room, a part of that meeting for a reason, right? So try to remember your self-worth, like really remind yourself of your achievements and just practice and rehearse as much as you can. And that's how you get better.
Correct. Such beautiful lines, Meher, you've mentioned. And one line that I want to repeat again for the viewers is, don't be afraid that what other people will say. Don't be afraid what other people will think of you. And be okay if someone disagrees with you. I think that's a very important line. Be okay if someone disagrees with you. And you're there in that meeting, you're there in the company for a reason. So there is no need for you to feel small or insufficient or that you don't know enough. So just speak out and be okay with if someone says a no.
Yes.
Meher, a recruiter spends less than 6 seconds on one resume. And if you open LinkedIn and browse different open jobs, you will see 1,000+ applications out there, 1,000+ resumes that they have to go through. So how can one stand out in this cluttered environment?
See, there are so many things one can do, but I feel like, Shagun, a lot of people, the first mistake that they're making is they're just making random applications to random positions that are open, right? They don't know what exactly they want to do. So if you're just making 1,000 random applications, you're going to not get the kind of quality of interviews that you really want. So first and foremost, you need to be very sure of, okay, what is it that I really, really want to do? And okay, if you're open to maybe 5 different types of fields, that's okay too. But at least narrow down to those 5 fields and then find target companies in those fields that are currently hiring. So number one is be really sure and be very specific as to what you're looking for. Second is, I think you really need to go into detail of the job description and read it thoroughly again and again. With ChatGPT's help, you can actually use that to customize your resume, your CV according to that job description. Now, I'm not saying that you need to lie about it, but I'm saying that you need to highlight some skills that you may have that you missed out on your resume. So, for example, they may be looking for teamwork skills, and maybe in college you did do a lot of team projects with your other classmates. So you need to highlight that on your resume more than other things. So it's really, really important to customize, to take out the time to make quality applications rather than quantity of applications. And I think that's the number one mistake that people are making, in just blindly submitting CVs without spending enough time and then cribbing about not getting any interview calls. And one thing that I really say is your network is your net worth, right? So if there are positions, let's say open at Wipro, Infosys, and you're really interested in working there, why not find somebody who's a friend of a friend who already works there and tell them about your candidature, tell them how you are the right fit for this job, and request them if they could refer you for that position. So referrals are a great way of standing out from a pile of CVs. So I feel these are the 3-4 things that you can do. You have to know what you really want and customize your CV accordingly, and then maybe reach out to your network to help you.
That is very true. I wish Mehar ChatGPT was there when we were struggling with our careers. I remember when I went to a foreign land, I didn't have an international level degree, and without an international level degree, no one was recognizing the work experience that I had from India. No one was ready to give me a job. I was struggling for months and applying mindlessly every single place. So these 2 things I think would have really helped. One is customizing my resume, but because I was applying, I was focusing on quantity more. I was just applying day in and day out to different jobs. Though I cracked one at the end of the day, but it was a long time when I was struggling. And secondly is ChatGPT. I wish people could be using ChatGPT as much as they should be, because we didn't have the privilege at that time when we were struggling with our careers, and people do have today. So make the best use of that. Ask specific questions, ask good questions, relevant questions, so you don't be replaced by someone who is using ChatGPT in a better manner.
Very, very true. Wow. Well said. And I completely echo what you said. When I also moved here, I think when I moved to London, the thing that was recognized on my CV was not my chartered accountancy degree. I think it was more that I had worked at an international company, and that they recognized. So I feel like it's so different in a foreign land, especially if you're planning to move abroad. You have to find ways that you can show your candidature. And Shagun, I don't know what worked for you at the end of the day, but for me, again, I got a job because of a referral. I reached out to people randomly on LinkedIn, trying to network with them, meeting them for coffee chats, and then, requesting them to eventually refer me in their organization. So yeah, in a foreign land, it's even more tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's accent issues. People don't understand how the education works in your country. I had work experience of 2 years from an international company, but still they were not recognizing it. So for me, what worked out was years and months of trying. That I was diligently applying, constantly applying, and that is, I think, worked for me. I didn't quit. That is one thing worked for me. So at the end of the day, I saw the light of the day.
Sorry.
Yeah, and it was not through a referral. I tried referrals also, and I barely knew anyone. When you land into a foreign land, you barely know people. You would be knowing 5 to 7 people, and those 5 to 7 people would be referring to, could recommend you to 5 to 7 friends of theirs, but not more than that. So what worked for me was randomly applying, and then making sure that I'm well prepared for an interview. Any interview call I got during those months, I made sure that I'm giving my 110%, because that I took as a golden opportunity. And one of the interviews, it just clicked.
I love that. And Shagun, a lot of people quit. Like you said, you didn't quit. So finding a job is also a full-time job, and you have to do it diligently, and you have to put in the work and the hours and really be, on it. And honestly, like when I say I use a referral, is not somebody I knew. It was complete stranger. So I feel sometimes we just, just have to let go of our ego and maybe let go of the shyness and just send a message to a stranger, because you never know who can help you, right? So yeah, just keep going is what I would say.
Yeah. So talking about this whole situation, Meher, one more thing I wanted to highlight to the viewers and the listeners is never stop yourself from asking for help. It is a very, very powerful tool. What will happen? The worst thing that will happen is the other person will say a no. But when you ask for help, you might be in a situation where the other person is ready to help you. And that could be a golden ticket to a job.
So true. So true.
So I asked so many people for help. I cannot even count that number. And I got that. I remember that thing from when you mentioned that you got a referral from not someone you knew, but from a random person because through your network. And that's what even I was doing. I was constantly on LinkedIn on those days, constantly on LinkedIn. For months, I was only on LinkedIn and no other social media. And randomly sending requests to people who I thought could be referring me or are working in those companies where I want to work, or are recruiters, HRs, and everything else.
That's what you have to go helter-skelter trying to, find whatever opportunities that you can, and it worked for you. Another thing that I want to add to what you said, Shagun, and I don't know if this happened with you. So, you said ask for help. And once I started working in London also, I never raised my hand to ask for support or help within the organization also. So if I did not know something, and I'm not supposed to know everything, right? I just put my head down and try to find the solution myself. Because I think in India, that was the culture the corporate culture that I was a part of. Because if you did not know something that, you will be put on another project, or the seniors will be thinking that you're not capable enough. So in India, it's very competitive, and you're easily replaceable at especially some of the big companies. So I never raised any concerns in those organizations. So in London, again and again, people would tell me, why don't you ask us for support? Why don't you ask us for help if you don't know something? Just ask questions. And I think that took me a long time to, switch that mode of actually raising my hand and asking for support. Hey, I don't know this. How do I do it? So I feel like that's also a cultural difference that I definitely faced.
Yeah. Meher, we all understand the importance of building a personal brand. Like just 2 minutes ago, we were talking about how active we both have been on LinkedIn when we were searching for jobs. And you mentioned that your network is your net worth. So what is the importance of anyone, especially students and young professionals, I would say, who don't focus on building their network and personal brand so much? What is the importance of building a personal brand for them on social media, and not just we feel that a personal brand is important for entrepreneurs or investors?
I think it's important for everybody now. We talked about how technology is changing things. Everybody is going to Google you, right? What comes up when somebody Googles you and is a reflection of who you are as a person and as a professional. So don't think that you won't be Googled. You will be Googled. Your previous experience will be checked on LinkedIn. It's like a verification that the recruiters do. And there were statistics that said about 70% of recruiters do try to find the person on LinkedIn. And what reflects then is like I call it like a floating resume on the internet, right? So that's really, really important of how you're showing up to a stranger. And I don't mean that, you need to constantly be posting, or you need to have, you need to put pictures all the time. No, nothing like that. But at least talk about your achievements, talk about your challenges, talk about the things that you've done well. People really resonate with that. So even as a fresher or as a college student, you have so much to share. So never think that your career is not unique enough to be talking about. If you've participated in a inter-college competition, talk about that. So I feel that your personal brand story and what you want to be known for can be defined by you on the internet. So why not take that opportunity and showcase yourself as the best possible version of yourself on this platform that is free for everybody to use. So I feel it's really important to start doing that early on and build that as you go on in your career. And that doesn't mean that your personal brand has to stay the same. I was in finance, then I moved to strategy, and now I'm, helping people with their careers. So that journey audience can go on with you on the internet.
And to add that, we hear a lot of people say that they don't know what content to post, and it's so difficult to keep finding content. But as a content creator myself, and I'm sure you also relate to this as a content creator, that content is everywhere. It's all around you. You just have to keep your eyes, ears, and senses open to grasp that content. Just I want to talk about this, what happened last night. I have been telling my 4-year-old son that let's meditate together. But he never does it because obviously he's 4-year-old. But yesterday when he saw me meditating, he came, he sat next to me and he started meditating. And I wrote about this on LinkedIn. that how children imitate what they see. And this was such a powerful content piece. So it's all around you. You just have to be a little more self-aware and aware about your environment, and you can start posting.
So beautiful. I love that. Yeah, exactly. Like today, you and I are talking. I'm getting like 100 content ideas right now. So I feel, yeah, it's in the day to day. I completely echo that.
Correct. Conversations with like-minded people definitely generate a lot of content ideas, and they're everywhere. So Mihar, when I mentioned that if someone realizes that they're in the wrong career, how can they move back? Obviously, moving back is difficult and it's also expensive. Let's admit that. Expensive in terms of cost, energy, time, and everything. It's wasted if you switch back to a different career. But most people wouldn't want to do that. Why should you want to waste any of your resources? So how can anyone make sure that from the starting itself, they are into the career that they really enjoy?
Shagun, I'll be very honest, and I'll quote Sheryl Sandberg. She says that your career is not a ladder, it's a jungle gym.
Yeah, a jungle gym.
So I feel that you cannot have everything figured out. You cannot know all your interests for the next 20 years. You're going to evolve as a person. The world is going to change. And it's not possible to plan your entire career right at the beginning. So I feel that what you said is that how does one get into a field which they don't regret and they really enjoy? I think, again, you will know what you're passionate about. Like, for example, I really like talking to people. I really like being on camera. I really like helping people. So I will try to find a field of work that will align with some of my interests, if not all of them. And I think you need to just sit by yourself and self-reflect. Okay, what are the things that I really enjoy? What are the things that I do? And time just flies, and I don't realize that time is flying. And then try to find your career options within those interests. And that will also happen if you maybe do some kind of job shadowing. So talking to people who are in the fields that you're interested in. So if you really want to switch your field, or if you are feeling trapped in the job or the degree that you're currently possessing and doing, I would say that take baby steps. Maybe do like a part-time job on the weekends, or, start a side hustle. So when I wanted to pivot my career, I was, I started MSB Vision on the weekends and in the evenings after my full-time job. So if you don't want to take that full-on plunge and risk right at the beginning, you can take baby steps in the direction, and then you can figure out also whether I want to do this full-time or not. So it's a good way to, sort of pivot in a slow manner.
Yeah. Even I was doing my full-time job and starting my own company over the weekends. So it was like balancing out both of them side by side until I figured out that this could be my full-time.
Exactly.
During exams and the exam results, we see a lot of students under pressure, and not just from pressure from themselves, pressure from the community, parents and teachers and so on. And then this overall experience of giving exams, waiting for the results, and then seeing yourself on the D-Day, it becomes like a traumatic experience. How can we make students understand that that's not the end of life if the results are not as you've expected them to be, and how to deal with failure if there is at all?
That question, Shagun, really strikes a chord, because I have myself faced failure while I was pursuing chartered accountancy, and that was the first time that I had faced any failure in my life academically. So I have been in, I think it was the toughest phase of my career, where I was faced with this obstacle, and I didn't know how to behave, and I didn't know how to react, and I didn't know. I started doubting everything about myself, and I think couple of things that really worked for me, and I feel that anyone who's faced failure could resonate with this, is number one is just take your time to heal. Like, it's not going to be easy to just bounce back the next day. So if you have faced any kind of failure academically or professionally, just take the time to absorb your emotions and heal yourself. It's really, really important to heal yourself and bounce back up after that. So take the time to connect with what you're feeling. After that, reflect on what went wrong. What are the things that you could have done better? What are the mistakes maybe you made? Talk to people who were successful in clearing those exams or doing better than you, and figure out their strategies, and try and really, really go back to what went wrong, so that you can, find a way to improve yourself the next time. The third thing that really worked for me is surrounding myself with positive people, happy people, cheerleaders, who were, supporting me, and really who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And the fourth thing that I did after that was, after I healed and I reflected and my mood was a little bit better, I made a strategy to do better next time. And that was, again, going back to what went wrong and filling the gaps of what I could have done better. And then I, really, I vouched to myself and pledged to myself that I'm going to excel this time. And I made things interesting. I started studying in a better manner. I used resources that I had not used before. Then, eventually I passed with flying colors. So I think it's really about reflecting and bouncing back up when the time is right, and your mindset has to be you have to be in the correct mindset to go and achieve things the next time.
Correct. As it is rightly said, Mihir, as the going gets tough, the tough gets going. And those are the moments that define oneself. I know it's very tough. It's very easy to say that bounce back or failure is fine. But the person who is facing he only knows what's going on with he or she. That's why we hear so many, cases of students who give up on their lives also at those moments. And it feels very sad when you're listening to those stories. But let's just say, our viewers, that those are the moments that are going to define you. And 10 years down the line, you're going to be proud that failure stuck you, but you evolved out of it.
Definitely true. And Shagun, it's really sad to hear that, India has some of the highest number of student suicides in the world. And that just shows the kind of pressure we're under and the pressure externally and even internally that we put on ourselves. And I feel a lot of the role a lot of this has to go back to the parents as well. How much pressure are you putting on your kids? That is their responsibility to recognize that, what you never know what can trigger your child. So it's really important to, set that boundary and not compare your kid with other kids and not put that undue pressure on them to pursue fields that they're not really interested in. And I think it's all about communicating. And if your child is unhappy, you're not going to be happy either, right? So I guess a lot of this responsibility is definitely on the parents as well.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to urge all the parents who are listening or viewing our episode to just be very close to your child. Keep talking to them every single day, see how they feel, and ask them to share their inner desires and deepest emotions with them. Because at the face of it, they might not be showing everything to you. But when you have the heart-to-heart conversation, then they should tell you what's inside of them. And that's what you have to know. And that's what responsibility of every parent is, to have that heart-to-heart conversation and to be close to your child, to know what's going on in his or her mind. So something like that doesn't happen with you. Vihan, my next question is, do you suggest people to be working for MNCs or working for startups? Because both have their own disadvantages and advantages. And how can one pick either MNCs or startups based on their personality and strengths? Because everyone has their own personality traits and they gel along more or they grow more in a startup environment rather than an MNC, and vice versa.
Again, Shagun, that's a very personal question, in the sense there's no right or wrong for everybody. And like you said, it's all comes back to, reflecting on what you really want to do. I feel the stark difference, because I've been in both positions. I worked at really large MNCs and I worked at the smallest startups with founders. So I feel the main difference is that in a large corporation, you're a small part of a big company, right? Whereas in a startup, you're a big part in a small company. So you have to see whether you want to go and join a company which has the big brand value, or where things are very set, the processes are set, the procedures are set, and the ways of working are set, the ways of conducting business are set. Whereas in a startup, you probably will work right with the founder or the founding team. You'll be able to, watch the startup grow, go through successes and failures, and play a bigger role in its growth compared to maybe a bigger company, right? So you have to see whether you are somebody who is maybe more flexible, more dynamic, and someone who's more excited to see products and companies grow, or you're somebody who wants a little bit more stability, somebody who wants a stable 9 to 5 or a 9 to 6 and working in a large corporation with the brand value is something that excites you. So I feel there's no right or wrong. Sometimes what happens, people join big MNCs for the brand value and then they realize that this is not for them. Something that's happened with me. And then they join smaller companies. And sometimes people work at smaller companies and they think, no, yeah, I need to join a bigger company. And I feel that you can always make that pivot and make that shift. There's no right or wrong. But yeah, just know that there is no hand-holding in either of those two scenarios, right? You'll have to figure it out yourself and see what works for you. I think it all comes down to how dynamic you are as a person and how adaptable you are and how excited you are to be a part of an organization that's growing versus that's already established.
Correct. And for all that, I think self-awareness is very important. One has to know what they're good at. One has to know in what environment they'll grow more. One has to know, where they will gel more with others and where they will contribute more in a more flexible environment or a more formal environment. Because startups are more informal, MNCs are more structured. So one has to ask their own self. One has to figure out on their own. That self-awareness has to come from within as to what you are looking for from your career.
Definitely. And it's a little bit of risk also, right? Joining I think there's risk everywhere now. Like even the MNCs are firing people left, right, center. So there's no job security even in the large corporations now. So you really have to, I feel, fight for your own career and figure out what you really want to do at this stage. And then if you don't like it later, you can always switch.
Yeah. So, Mihir, you mentioned about the book Lean In. I remember during the first half of the conversation. I also read that book, and in that book, it says that research studies point out that women are very poor at salary negotiations. They just take whatever is given to them on the table. So, what are some salary negotiation strategies for women you would recommend, or for people who are starting out in the career?
That's such a good question, Shagun, and I completely resonate with that. I've never negotiated my salary. I think the only pitch I've ever done is for a promotion. I guess we are very as we have more imposter syndrome than men do. So we may have the same number of qualifications as the men in the room, but we'll probably doubt ourselves a little bit more, and it just comes inherently in most women. And I think at that time we just have to firstly know our worth. If you do have 3-4 years of work experience, you need to do the research on tools like LinkedIn and Glassdoor or even in your network to figure out, okay, what is the market value of someone with my level of knowledge and my level of skills? And this is the minimum that I will be willing to accept. So go with a minimum benchmark always. And I would always say go about a little bit, maybe 10 to 15% higher than what you would be willing to accept, because there's always going to be back and forth. Yeah, there's always going to be room for negotiation. There'll always be back and forth where you may have to, settle down on the counter offer. So always know your worth and do your research and go into that conversation with numbers, with the value that you will add to that organization. And also being aware, again, goes back to self-awareness as what is it that you bring to the table that 5 other people can't. And you have to know that, you have to win your own battles. You have to fight your own battles. You have to win your own battles. So nobody's going to come into that room and pitch for you. You have to do it for yourself. So if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. That's something that you really, really have to remember. And one more thing, Shagun, because women are more emotional, I feel that in that conversation, you have to really, really have a control on your emotions and go on the professional tangent and not on the personal tangent. So again, go back to, proving your worth, proving your candidature, proving all the capabilities that you already possess, and going and really, really not showing that maybe your soft side or your vulnerable side just for those 5 minutes. You can come out of that room and come out of that conversation and maybe shed a few tears. But in that moment, in that conversation, please keep things very, very professional and always know that there will be a counter offer. And know your minimum that you're willing to accept. So I think you need to push yourself a little bit. Again, it comes down to, rehearsing that maybe with a friend or a colleague or before that final round of interview or whatever. And rehearsing that, knowing your worth and putting yourself out there. And like you said, max to max, what will happen? They'll say no, but at least you'll be proud that you tried.
Correct. So true, Mihir. Here, you push so much of content out there, and then you're a career strategist, a career coach, an entrepreneur. How do you stay organized, and how do you get so much done?
Shagun, I think as a new mother, my calendar is all over the place right now. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, you must have noticed, I had to reschedule this because my daughter is around the house, and I have to plan things accordingly. I feel that now I have dedicated a few days to do certain tasks. And in those days, I give my 100%. And then when I'm spending time at home with my family, then I to completely disconnect. I stay organized by probably adding things to my calendar, being very transparent and communicating on time, and figuring out what works for me when, and sticking to that timetable as much as I can. So I'm somebody who's like makes lives on to-do lists and brain dumps. So I made a to-do list last night for today, and this was number one on the list. And really knowing the top 3 things that I need to get done every day, so that I feel like I had a good day if I get those top 3 things done. So yeah, it's all about prioritizing, and I say it's a lot about work-life integration and not work-life balance. So integrate your work into your life, and stay organized the best you can.
Yeah. You told about so many productivity hacks in just 2 sentences, Meher. That's so impressive. You talked about to-do list, you talked about brain dump, you talked about scheduling, you talked about organizing, you talked about managing your next day on the previous night itself, and then talking about preparing a chunk of content on one particular day, and the rest of the day is having more time with the family. So I think every content creator does that. We prepare content and then shoot a lot of content at once, so we can have more time on the other days for other things. And then brain dump also. I also do brain dump a lot. I want to tell the viewers and the listeners that what is brain dump is brain dump. There's a certain limit to how much our brain and how much our mind, our memory can handle. So if you have a lot of information in our mind, your brain will not work at optimal capacity. What you have to do is whatever is going on in your mind, you have to dump it down on a piece of paper so you can have more space in your mind for other things.
Yes, and you can always come back to that later.
Exactly. And you can always come back to that later because it's at a physical location. It's on a piece of paper.
Yes.
And anything else you want to add on? Something that you feel is missing from my questions and you want to add up from your own side?
No, I think you covered everything. I will just say, Shagun, that I wish somebody said this to me when I was starting my career, is that, you'll figure it out. Like, eventually the dots connect. You can't plan your whole career, your whole life. Right now, also, I don't know what I'll be doing 10 years from now. Right? So I feel things are changing very rapidly. Figure out what are your 1 or 2 strengths and focus on becoming a specialist in those 1 or 2 things rather than, becoming a generalist for 50 things.
100%.
And that's how you will become irreplaceable. If you're the best person to do ad marketing, if you're the best person to use ChatGPT, people will hire you for those 1 or 2 skills. So I think in today's ever-changing world, you have to really keep tabs with what's changing in your industry also, whether you're in finance, whether you're in marketing. Things are changing very, very rapidly. So stay abreast and keep your knowledge up to date. Only then you'll be able to, become the irreplaceable asset for any organization.
Correct. Specialize in whatever field you have, customize your resume, and schedule blocks of time for whatever work you have. Plan your days in advance. Whatever work you have, put it down on a piece of paper, have to-do list, to keep doing mind dumping. Reach out to more people in your network because your network is your net worth. If you're public speaking, then ask more questions and don't be afraid that people would say a no. Reach out to more people in your network for help. And these are some of my takeaways from our conversation, Meher. I'm sure the audience has so many takeaways that they will not watch this video once but more than once because they will not be able to grasp everything at once. You've given so many valuable insights to our viewers and our listeners.
Thank you, Shagun. Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and
so much to say, Meher. I have resonated so much with you. I feel I'm talking to another version of mine because I feel that there are so many commonalities between us.
I love such conversations, when you feel so aligned on so many things.
Correct. So true, Meher. When I'm sure we'll have another session, maybe 6 months, 8 months down the line, when viewers will post more questions in the comment section. So let's have great quality time with our families, and congratulations on being a new mother. And I hope you have great time with your daughter.
Thank you so much, Shagun. That's lovely. And yes, definitely another chat. Maybe in 6 to 8 months, we can talk about motherhood and balancing careers and women in the workforce. And there's so much more to talk about, right?
So much more to talk. Yeah. The conversations can be endless between us. Lovely chatting with you too. Thanks, Meher. Bye.